Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report, and on this, like I would say, a bloodhound, Tim Alexander is there, and his website, of course, his blog is Europe Business with 1s.blogspot.com. Tim, what's the breaking news? Because I've got tons here, but I'd like you to hit the high points. So I don't want to steal your thunder.
We've got a lot. Both Europe and the United States have announced sanctions against Russia. The European one was very interesting. It's a three-step process, and it says unless Russia engages in direct talks with the coup-appointed Ukrainian government, in other words, the coup junta, it will continue to racket these up. The United States did some very limited sanctions at this step, but it leaves the executive order, which declared a national emergency, by the way, that Obama signed today, gives him the authority to expand on that rather dramatically. The Crimean Parliament voted today to join Russia, to become a part of Russia, and in 10 days they will hold a referendum for the citizens to approve or disapprove that. At the very least, this is a body blow to the Ukrainian coup government because it will not only lose the Crimea, but it will lose revenue from renting bases there to Russia. And then there's more. There has been some military movements. Let me get to that here. We are sending a powerful Burke-class guided missile destroyer, the USS Truxtun, into the Black Sea. As you know, Bill, that class of warship is an air defense destroyer. Its radar and anti-missile missiles and air defense missiles can sweep an area of many hundreds of square miles. And however, of course, Russia has several missile systems that are capable of taking it out in literally a minute or two, from the Onyx, the Sunburn, and also the Alexander missiles. The last one is literally about Mach 8.
So what you're saying, and I'm going to use a little dark humor here, Russia and America haven't set the date yet, but they're going to do a war game together, which is really good and friendly. And what we're going to do is we're going to see what's called American Smackdown. We should have it on ESPN. It means America is going to get smacked down because the first time our missile carrier destroyer systems like this come in play with Russia, you're going to have a concept hypersonic cruise missile, and even as a kinetic weapon, even without a warhead, our boats are going to the bottom.
Yeah, well, I hope that doesn't happen because we got a lot of good people on that ship.
If they engage,
it can happen.
If they engage, they're going to the bottom. I mean, I would say this not as a prophecy, but as a technical fact that we have nothing to defend against the Russian systems, and that includes their mobile new Tupolev missiles. So we're idiots. Russia right now basically has the final...
They have subs in this area, and their submarines have the VF-111 underwater rocket system.
Yeah, you're talking about the hypersonic... You're talking about the concept hypersonic cruise missile. Then they have the supercavitation torpedo.
Exactly,
the supercavitation torpedoes. Yeah, and these can literally... They don't go through the water, they actually go through air, an air bubble around the missile.
The exhaust, the exhaust goes in two ways. Most of it goes out the tail, but some goes out the nose, which creates a bubble in front of the rocket torpedo, and the rocket torpedo actually flies through a bubble of hot exhaust gas. It's quite a weapon system, and it's about 4 times faster than a regular torpedo, and by the time you hear it, it's time to say a very quick, and I mean very quick prayer.
Okay, now, here's the what I call my guess is Russia's response. Second thing is if they do any sanctions, Russia and Iran will prepare for cybernetic attack. They won't necessarily do it, but they'll prepare for cybernetic attack if there's any military maneuvers or sanctions. Number 2, the BRICS nations, which have already been preparing for years by the increasing hegemony attempts by the West and the bankers to surround by appointing NATO countries or former CIS Russian nation countries and making deals with the oligarchs locally. They have, in fact, this is made a statement by I think our foreign secretary that basically stated we've been buying off local businessmen and oligarchs for 20 years, and we spent $5 billion. This is an actual quote. And so when we want to waltz into Ukraine, we already got the wealthy people in our back pocket. That's her being a crazy of what she said. This is disgusting behavior, and if they think they're going to get away with it with Russia,
well, those wealthy people are simply crooks. Right, and one thing Putin did in Russia, he got rid of almost all the oligarchs.
My guess is
but the Ukraine that didn't happen.
The next thing I think that will happen is now that they're taking over Sevastopol and the Crimea. There's two other major areas. One of the first things they did is the so-called coup or thug government, we'll call it from now on. We're going to call it the thug government because they actually paid for the junta. These maniacs, the Maidan Party, actually hired snipers, probably Israeli snipers, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was down I have a long list of stuff to cover, and that's down the list.
So anyway, they hired these snipers, and what's going to happen is I think Russia will then annex Donetsk and the eastern Ukraine, and then the southern part of Ukraine, and basically Ukraine is going to look pretty sawed off by the time they're finished.
And when the IMF gets done with western Ukraine, the people there will be...
No, they're never going to get there. They're never going to get there. I'll tell you what's going to happen. The very moment they start putting on trial or executing Russian popular or affiliated people in Ukraine, in the Kiev area, Russia's going to send in troops and just do a blitzkrieg. They're just going to just blitz them. And it won't matter how many special forces and Delta guys and Israeli special forces, just like in Georgia near the Rokai Tunnel, the Russian Spetsnaz will slaughter them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Ukraine is now, the junta government is now asking to join NATO.
No, they're asking to join what's called the Long League of the Dead.
Okay, there's also been some Air Force movements. We have boosted our U.S. Air Force power in the Russian border area. We have 4 F-15 Eagles that operate out of Lithuania. We're sending half dozen additional F-15s to that area, and of course that's north of the Ukraine. But we're sending 12 F-16s to Poland. That's half a squadron, and along with that, aerial refueling tankers. Now,
how many of these $1 million jets do they want to have Russia knock out of the air with the S-400? How many pilots which they can't replace do they want
care about
the Russians to kill? Do they? How many times do they want to see that?
If our so-called leaders cared about our men, they wouldn't get us involved in these unnecessary wars all over the whole damn world. They don't care about our people.
Well, this is an ExxonMobil British Petroleum hydrofracking war where they're hydrofracking and trying to break up Gazprom, which makes Europe dependent on Russian gas and oil because I can't believe that the Europeans are that stupid. And Catherine Ashton, after she got this information from the Latvian foreign minister, proving that the Maidan government are a bunch of Nazi thugs that actually killed their own people to push forward their coup.
Baroness Ashton was in a conversation with the foreign minister of Estonia. And the Russian equivalent of the NSA picked up the conversation, decoded it, and they have it, and the foreign ministry has confirmed that it was a real conversation. And basically what the foreign minister told her is that they on the ground, they looked at the bodies of the people killed, the police officers and the demonstrators. They were all killed by the same sniper. And we set it up. Like you said, it was probably a Mossad sniper team.
Right.
And the EU knew about it.
Sure they did. So how can they have the nerve? You know what? They're going to freeze in the dark next winter if they try this. And if they started shooting more, bye-bye American Air Force, bye-bye American Navy in the Black Sea and the Persian Gulf, bye-bye hegemony and American empire. See ya. His first name was Bondi. He was Hungarian. And was Hungarian wrestler, boxer. Welcome back, and what we're seeing here are the formative stages of what I call a near miss, almost like we just apparently had not long ago almost 1,000 meter, almost 1,000 meter super asteroid zip past the Earth at relatively close speed. I call it the, they say in the military, if you can hear the whizzing of the bullet, you're not dead. Right, it means you're not dead yet. If you can hear whiz, well, there's a whizzing sound going by us in terms of Russia and America right now. And the next step is a peace treaty to bring a temporary peace between the Western bankster, idiot, criminal nations that are literally stealing us blind, and Russia and the BRICS nations, China, India, South Africa, etc., all together basically saying, Brazil, we're not going to put up with this anymore, manipulating and controlling and strip mining the second and third world. And we're at the end game.
One of the tools in Putin's bag of responses is to put a stake through the heart of the American dollar.
How can you do that? Here's your analysis of how you do it. I have some ideas, but tell me what you think.
Well, I mean, first off, all he has to do is start an avalanche. You can start an avalanche with a snowball if you do it the right way, at the right place, at the right time. And right now, America and the whole financial system is living on borrowed time.
I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one way. This is the simplest way. All he does is declare to every one of the oil bourse nations in the Middle East that they will exchange Russian rubles, right? And what he can also do is he can say, just like China is trying to back their currency with gold, the renminbi in China.
They have gold. We don't. My guess is there's almost nothing in Fort Knox.
But listen, let's put the reality is, they may not be in Fort Knox, but we have more potential gold in Alaska than the whole rest of the world by many, many times. This is all levels to scam the public, because what they want to do is they want to have America force the authentication biometric currency in the world. As I stated before, and I'm the only one that says this, the mark of the beast is not coming from Brussels and the beast computer. It's not coming from Moscow or from Singapore or China or Beijing. It's coming from America.
Well, one of the Rockefellers a few years ago leaked that. I mean, he said that that's our intention, is to put the chip in everyone. And right. You see, we're
they're ready.
Close.
I mean, they're very ready to do that.
You use very little currency. And if you're going to buy something for much over $1,000 and you take currency in, it causes red flags. I don't know if it's 10,000 or maybe it's 5,000 now.
I found out recently, by the way, even if it adds up over a period of say 90 days, and you do it at multiple institutions, they now have these data centers that are now tracking every transaction. So if you buy, say, $3,000 of gold here and $3,000 there over a 90-day period, you automatically flag in their databases.
Well,
so they used to say
if you
10,000.
go to buy a car and you take $10,000 or $5,000 cash, maybe for whatever reason you just sold a car or something, that's flagged. But let me go back. I'm about out of time here. I got several more things to tell you. Russia has reinforced its big air base in Armenia with some improved MiG-29K jet fighters and a significant number, 18-plus attack helicopters. Now, why this is important? Two reasons. One, Armenia is a stepping stone into the Middle East. Turkey, it's a stepping stone into Syria and Israel for Russia. Secondly, it's in the neighborhood of the Ukraine and Turkey. So, you want to have fighters and stuff built up over a wide area. So with the attack helicopters and the MiG-29Ks, they're building up a pretty good way, and I'm sure they have at least the S-300, if not the S-400 there. They're building up a very powerful force that they can move at about 1,800 miles an hour in any direction they want. Going down a list here, I'll tell you, the Ukraine may well be, and there's a number of articles on this now, the U.S. dollar Waterloo. And
I think that the word was actually somebody doing some predictions that March 4th would be the date. And of course, March 4th Well, it would be, and I think you saw that email too.
I think that he said approximately March 4th. Yeah.
Right, but what I've heard from our sources, both from talking to Bob Gaskin, which we did a report over the weekend, and from many other sources, including Gerald Celenti's newsletter, etc., that between the second and third quarter, there's going to be a financial catastrophe. And by the way, this is all by design, because remember, for years they've been aggravating the Russians. Rather than expanding NATO, which is irrational, what they should have had is some reasonable dialogue with Russia and China so they both wouldn't be building up a giant empire to start a world war. The human race isn't going to survive the next war. Period. It's over, okay? They start a great big shooting war and Russia decides to have their submarine-launched nuclear missiles go at American cities. There won't be any America anymore. In fact, if there's any survivors 200 years from now, they won't even remember that there was an America. They'll think it's a legend. Please continue.
The missile that Russia test-fired about 2 days ago is a monster of a missile, okay? And it's land mobile. It's designed, they can drive it into a city, erect it, and fire it in seconds. They can take it out in the country. They can take it in a forest and fire it. It's designed to make it extremely difficult, virtually impossible, to take out all their missiles in the first strike. Okay. They have 300 of those, and each one has about 10 large thermonuclear warheads on it, plus decoys.
That's
so do the math.
Yeah.
Yeah. 300 times 10 is 3,000 warheads. They actually have about 6,000 warheads, but that's just on that system. Okay.
That's not even on their submarines, which are, by the way, 5 times the volume of our largest nuclear submarines, and somewhere around 12 times the nuclear throw weight per submarine.
Yeah, they had a double-hulled one, but they're not using that anymore. But yeah, right. But the point is, they can take out every American city, the 200 largest American cities. The American population would be gone, as in dead. The infrastructure would be gone, as in history. We would be in the dark ages, and the same thing for Canada, the same thing for Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. And, of course, we can return the favor. Okay, then what's left? Well, that's a satanic dream. That's the as you call him, Lucifer, the ultimate loser, Satan himself, Lucifer, who time is up, and he knows he's about to be tossed out of this world. Eviction notice is coming, and he wants to kill us all. And this is where we're heading with this insanity. Whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 10 years from now, this is where we're heading. It won't last
that long. Yeah, let me give you my estimated timeline. We're going to have a peace treaty probably by the summer because we're going to have war. We're going to have a 7-year period called the tribulation. The first half will be false peace, and then all hell is going to break loose. So if you just use those main guidelines, the peace treaty will partition the state of Israel, set up Palestine, allows the Jews to start a blood sacrifice, and when you see these signs, as they say, without setting dates, you know you're there. We have Chris Harris on. Last week I posted up on our website an article, which I'm going to fix a few typos and expand the article, and some more current emails as well that we've exchanged. And I give you great credit, Chris. That's your radio name, Chris Harris, on the dialogue we've had over the last 3 years, trying to actually use prayer, number one, from the Most High God, giving us inspiration, proper research and science. Remember, whether it's nuclear science, medicine, whatever, they are all arts based on science, and science is based on mathematics. Mathematics is the queen of science, and mathematics is governed by the king, which is called logic. As Spock says, live long and prosper. Well, without logic, there is no mathematics. Well, we have technical solutions to literally every issue dealing with Fukushima. And by the way, those issues that were brought up also mean a lot of our plants here in America and around the world out of over 500 sites are in danger of losing control of those plants, whether it's KEPCO in Korea or the Swiss nuclear reactors, which all 5 reactors in Switzerland sit on fault lines, or in France or along the coastline, where they're in danger of the tsunami from the Cumbre Viejo Azore Mountains, the volcanic mountains of causing a giant tsunami 800 feet high or higher, could swamp these very easily. Or extreme weather, where literally the air intake in these diesel generators that back up plants are below the flood line or the tsunami line along the American eastern seaboard and coast. So basically, we have stupidity on steroids here and around the world. We have a sharp pencil with the engineers, and we have people that don't use imagination to say, they whine and say, but we don't have any solutions. And I want to embarrass them. I wrote this paper. I'll be speaking at least by Skype at a conference with George Butler in Austin, Texas, coming up at the end of the month. He's hoping to have either live or by Skype Arnie Gunderson, Helen Caldecott, many others at the end of this month. I think around the 23rd or 24th. You can check. We'll have more details and be posting it up. And I'll probably bring George on to talk about it. But tell us what's the latest scenario here, Chris, because there is no good news here. I see no action whatsoever. I see further deterioration. I see the water that's come in from the current weather systems basically is only allowing storms from the southern Pacific Ocean. So there's no radioactive water coming in here to Southern California. It's all clean as a whistle, which means the blocking highs that are going to cause a long-term drought here in America are fixed. They're not letting North Pacific air movement storms coming in. So the Pacific Ocean is done. And the radioisotopes that are long-acting are going to bioaccumulate until you see a sea of death, a sea of devastation. And the little sardines and the life forms and the seals and sea lions and other forms of life that live off these different parts of the food chain, they're crowding into things like Monterey Bay and other areas along the California coast, and they are terrified of what they see coming. They can smell death. And our politicians try to lie to us, and we have the grinning, we call the fool in the White House. We have the international community, the IAEA. We have even the NRC basically not staying strident enough. And I'd say this also for Chris Busby, who speaks out of turn in areas he's not an expert on, or Arnie Gunderson toning it down. There's nothing to tone here. This is an extinction level event, and if they have a similar large earthquake strike, 5 other nuclear sites in northern Japan almost lost control of containment and their backup power systems, but they managed to just barely hold it together. There's permanent damage to many of these plants, including OI, and that means if there's a major earthquake, they're going to lose it at more than one plant, not just Fukushima. And the plans now to put in this ice wall is the height of stupidity. Hot corium that hits this will be like taking a hot poker against a large ice cube. It'll burst, which means even if they encircle the plant and try to keep water away from above in the aquifer coming down off the mountain or prevent water from going out, there's nothing they can do to stop that hot corium from poking through it and causing an explosive release of radioisotopes. So everything they've done is what I call the anti-Midas touch. They literally touch it and it turns to human fecal matter. And Chris, let's go through the details of how demonically stupid the international community and scientists are doing. And I hope to embarrass them with this paper that I wrote, which is now available on our website. And I'm going to fix some typos because I use Dragon Dictate and add additional information on there about why we use certain things for detox and how they're used. But people need to start understanding that there is no issue about this, that we don't have an intelligent, scientifically valid, imaginative solution, even our hydraulic or pneumatic robots we talked about, for fixing the problem. But none of these solutions have been put into play, and as a result, we also have the same issues here in America, like the WIP reactor in New Mexico, which is way down on the list in terms of the regular media reporting just how dangerous this is and what it's doing to the local workers working the plant that are getting exposed, and what is it doing to the local environment. Is it venting to the people around them within 100 miles? What's going to happen to their health? We know that the zones of toxic radiation effect, and this is from our academy and from nuclear scientists, including Dr. Petkow, that developed the Petkow effect in terms of long-term local-level radiation, that within 125 miles you can see zones of increased Alzheimer's disease, congestive heart failure, neurodegenerative diseases, diabetes, etc., all in rings of zone based on how many kilometers or miles they are from ground zero to the local nuclear reactors, because they all vent off tritium, thorium, etc. So anybody who thinks that nuclear energy with ancient, stupid technology, boiling water with nuclear isotopes, fissioning, is out of their mind. And to analyze and rip it apart, almost down to its subatomic nuclei, we have Chris Harris. Chris, tell us, what's the latest?
Okay, Dr. Bill, thank you very much for letting me be on your program again and discuss this topic, kind of important. I can't believe
you do a very good job, by the way. I want to congratulate you on the hard work you've done that we're getting this information out, and we're going to embarrass the big, what I call the snooze media, the snooze-tainment, and the scientists that are basically even NGO scientists that aren't doing something or even having a YouTube or a Vimeo or a live stream conference on these issues, or the idiot governments that pretend that they're going to measure CO2 levels because they think we're all going to die of carbon dioxide when we're going to be long dead if we don't address Fukushima and other issues similar to it.
Well, actually, that's one of the first topics I just wanted to bring up. It was almost a sidebar topic, but it was that Shepard Smith clip that I had sent you that somebody made a really good grab on YouTube and said Shepard now acknowledges that that TEPCO was lying to them all along. And this is something, we came out and started discussing Fukushima not because we were jumping on someone else's bandwagon. I think we sort of created the,
we built the bandwagon. We built the wagon. It's our wagon. We put the wheels on it. We painted it. We put the handle in the front of the cart. They wanted to jump on the bandwagon. At first, of course, you were getting all kinds of ad hominem attacks. You're fear-mongering. You're just trying to scare the public. And the fact is, we were facing the music about how dangerous this is. Having been a doctor taking care of people working around the nuclear industry in Savannah, south of Chicago, at a nuclear reactor, and Rocky Flats, I can tell you up front, working with radioisotopes in the lab, etc., you have to show respect for these little fellas. They're dangerous, and if you don't show respect, they're going to bite you.
Yeah, that's right. That's like I said, we didn't ask for permission to go out and come forward with this information, and we just did it. And just because we knew it was right, it was the right thing to do. And and again, in a way, it's sort of gratifying to see that that others are also doing it. That's really all I wanted to say about that.
So let's get into what's the latest about Fukushima. What's happening there, and what's happening back here in America and around the world. What I've heard is now Rosatom of Russia is selling nuclear reactors all over the place. 8 different nations about to buy a chunk of a whole pile of reactors, including 8 different reactors that Russia sold South Africa and going to install over the next 6 years. 8 nations. That's just Russia. Then America, of course, and France are proliferating nuclear weapons grade type generator, you would call breeder reactors, all over the place. And Obama has literally taken the seal off to say, hey, we can still build nuclear reactors. It's part of his, quote, green policy. They don't tell you it's fluorescent radioactive green. It's green, all right. The green of dying flesh. Back in a moment. Chris, let's go through your long list of issues that have developed in Japan and why the recommendations to literally remediate and prevent those disasters here. One of the simplest first things they should have done in Japan is simply have backup power generators 3 to 4 miles inland at higher altitude, so if there was a tsunami, it wouldn't swamp the backup generators. Something simple like that. Or making sure they actually broke down the natural, if you want to call it, wall that was there to prevent a tsunami by breaking it down and creating a platform to build the Fukushima Daiichi plant. They should have realized that a seawall, which other areas in the coast, literally north or south of them, that had built these giant seawalls, virtually had no damage at all. So people need to realize that earthquakes are survivable if you have earthquake dampening technology in buildings. If you have giant seawalls to prevent tsunamis from literally swamping over your coastal line, there would have been no problem at all. Fukushima would be fine. The fact is that we're not taking to heart those specific issues we found here in Japan that could replicate problems in America or in other areas around the world. So let's go through your list.
Okay, an article in the Mainichi with the Japanese media talked about a reporter who was allowed to tour Fukushima for the first time in many months because of other problems that were going on there, including leaks from the kind of tanks that we were talking about. That would be the bolted together connection tanks. And now they let a reporter go in, and the reporter wrote an article on it. And the Nuclear Regulatory Authority in Japan allowed this to happen. And this is some of the items that this reporter discovered. Number one, I'd like to give a little update on how many fuel assemblies have been removed from Unit 4. So out of the 1,533 fuel assemblies, 433 have been removed to date. And that's also in this article. Actually, they said it was 418, but it's up to 433 now. I sense a slowdown in the rate of removal, and perhaps they're getting to some sticky spots. Perhaps they're getting to some areas where there's just a lot of stubborn fuel assemblies that perhaps require some more coaxing to be pried out of the fuel racks that they're stored in.
Yeah, that's a good term, coaxing. In other words, it's not like you slather a kind of a lubricant on it. These fuel rod assemblies are physically twisted to the point of non-recognition, and in many cases, it's virtually impossible to pull them out of the fuel rod assemblies. Most likely what will happen is the borinated rubber is broken, the fuel rod assemblies have lost their integrity, and you're going to lose a bunch of pellets in the bottom of the fuel cooling pool. If these fuel rod pellets accumulate enough heat or neutron flux, they'll not only anneal the structure of the lower parts, they could also degrade the seal that holds the water into the tank. And if that water flows out, there's nothing to stop the whole area from getting hypercritical and going into a pyrophoric fire. So I foresee disaster. I don't think this is going to end well.
I've been concerned about the reactor cavity seal myself for a long time now, as you know. And,
you're the main one actually taught me about that, but I've been looking at other issues of it. And this combined with subsidence, which is now many inches of subsidence and the danger of another earthquake. And then the seawall, if this ice wall is built around it that contains water that's continually being poured into it, the whole thing will become like a big radioactive porridge bowl. It's very dangerous what they're planning to doing, and there's no end game here that's going to make this a better situation.
Yeah, incidentally, ice walls have been successfully used on a smaller scale for...
Yeah, but not with hot radioactive corium.
No, now it's something that's hot and right.
Yeah. They're talking about slurry after, let's say, a coal mine, which is not hot radioactive debris that can puncture a hole through it and cause a massive rupture of the ice wall. So what I think is good, this is going to end up with basically being a very bad test. In other words, if I was going to do an aptitude test for physics and I put this as a question before the students that were going to be trying to vie for a scholarship, say at MIT like I did, they would fail that part of the test. I would say you don't have the kind of physics imagination in polydimensional space or the mathematical logic to be able to handle the complexities of the kinds of work we're going to put before you. If they came up with a stupid idea like an ice wall as the solution to this problem.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the article where the reporter also noted that there is a lot of work being done now to assemble welded type tanks for the highly radioactive water to replace the flange type tanks, the ones that we talked about a long time ago. And just, it's, I think we were one of the first to air that, if not the first, to say that these tanks are completely inadequate for the service area. Those are the ones causing all kinds of leakages, and they were unsuitable for the task. Also, so it's interesting to see that that's made its own paragraph in this article. Other things too were the reporter noted twisted pipes and blown off ductwork from the hydrogen explosion and such like that. It was pretty good. It was actually a well-written article, and not to mention the high radiation areas that are all over they're peppered with high radiation areas, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those are. So let's go through that. There's a short summary of that list of issues.
Well, there was something else I wanted to cover also. It looks like they're doing some kind of work onto in Japan. Another article shows that they're trying to find ways to transport such debris that is too has too high levels of radiation, so that you can't just bring them through your neighborhood to say on trucks. And they're trying to design new kinds of containers that you could put.
Well, I'll tell them what they need to do in the design. Number one, they need to have one that has interdigitating fingers. So when they create a container, it snaps together, and those fingers literally, there's two enemies, water and neutrons. So what they have to do is they need to have made it out of starlight, which will tolerate up to 15 to 20,000 degrees, and put nanobeads of depleted uranium and boron. And what that'll do is capture the neutrons, prevent a gamma flux. And actually, if the fingers, what they do is they slow the neutrons so it stops any criticality in the corium that they have there, or the radioactive isotopes. And they should be converting all the radioisotopes, filtering all the water to a slurry that can then be put in these highly concentrated containers. And they have to be double, if you want to call it like a double-hulled ship, they have to be double containered so that even if there's an internal burst of the internal chamber, there's an external one, so there's a secondary catchment. That can be done. They can make them relatively small, no longer than 10 feet, like the ones that I've seen stacked inside underground chambers, like the ones we were used to, sending radioactive isotopes from Rocky Flats to a facility outside Dallas-Fort Worth, and another one outside of in Salt Lake City. That's very doable, but they need to use starlight and depleted uranium nanobeads and boron, and that will fix the problem. But starlight's a material that was invented in the 60s. It's easily available, and it's the toughest material made on the planet, and it will survive neutron annealing, and it will not break down its crystal structure.
Well, what I see with the construction of this kind of a container is that somebody may get the idea that you can use them also to create low-dose areas and transport workers through them, perhaps, if you put them end-to-end.
Well, yeah, so you can put them, you used about that before with depleted uranium. What I would do is make something that's like a Lego block, and you can make Lego block tunnels and containers using these starlight blocks that have depleted uranium and boron in them, and literally snap together to make tunnels and side connector passageways and airlocks and everything. So these are all very doable. We need to use our imagination to start, thinking out of the box to figure out solutions that can be done that can protect workers, but act remotely, just like we talked about pneumatic or hydraulic robots, about the idea of creating corium catchers underneath the facility, and Kevlar spider silk tents above with a filtration system. And the best way to actually filtration system is one what I call what's called a cyclotron filtration, where you basically create a vortex electromagnetic field, because all radioisotopes are charged particles, and using a magnetic cyclotron field, you can pull off like a centrifuge the specific isotopes, and it'll even tell you which isotope it is based on the ratio that's coming off in millisieverts per hour into the specific subcontainer. So this is all very doable. So when people say you can't do it, use your imagination out there, and we want to embarrass you scientists into doing something out of the box to fix the problem. Here in America and around the world, the nuclear age, as it was, including nuclear weapons, should be over, or mankind will be over. We need to move to higher nuclear technologies, safe nuclear fusion, etc., but we don't have that now, and the big push is to cover it up. So the Abe government is returning on their reactors, even in the face of 500% more earthquakes of 5 or greater. That's insanity. Any closing comments, Chris?
Stay healthy, I guess. People speak to Dr.
Stay detoxified. Don't drink the Fukushima water. As they say, don't commit aquacide, as you heard that on the joke the other day. We'll be back on hour number 2 tonight on the Reds Network as a guest. Tomorrow's firing line, preparedness, civil defense, and much more. And open lines in hour number 2, the top of hour 2 tomorrow.